It is taking some time.
I believe we're live now.
Okay, I think we are live now. Hello, there's no one here right now, but this session is going to be recorded. So whoever joins us and who did join us earlier, I'm really sorry. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty that we're trying to overcome, but we are here now, and Aisha is with us here now, and I'm really glad that she is. We're going to make it a very quick session and try to give you as much information, helpful information on the project management guideline with us. So without further ado, I'm gonna go and have Aisha, who's our project manager, to give us an introduction of herself, and I'm just gonna start engaging her in a couple of questions, and we're gonna begin from there.
Thank you for that. So my name is Aisha Aftab. I'm a senior project manager with Microsoft, currently based in Islamabad, but I cover Europe, Middle East, and Africa in terms of delivery. I've been in the industry for a very long time now, I believe almost 13 years, going further. And my portfolio ranges from initially working in quality assurance and moving into project and program and portfolio management. And that's mainly it about me. I'm based in Islamabad, so if any of the local, attendees want to catch up with me later on, happy to do that as well.
Thank you so much. And I would encourage everyone to do so because, a mentor is someone who can really guide you in your relevant field. They'll have all the right experience, so you can, reach out to them and ask them questions. So, Aisha, I'm gonna, I think, so if you were to share with our candidates on the interview guidelines for project management, I also feel like, for every interviewer, there always a pre, during, and post time where, you have to do particular things. So do you think like there are a couple of things which interviewers could benefit from before the interview happens? Would you guide them into how to prepare for it? What would be like the top 5 things that you would ask someone to prepare for?
Okay, so Huda, mainly when we talk about project program or portfolio management, this is not an exact science. So let me start with a disclaimer to people around me. This is not just technical information or as technical as, let's say, solution design or architecture or software development. This field or program delivery is more of a combination of understanding people around you, understanding maybe soft skills, as well as having some technical insight as well. So that's why this field is a bit more tricky. And the best way, to be honest, to prepare for an interview, or if you are really interested in going down the project management track, is to understand your strengths. A strong project manager would have good organizational skills. They're somebody who are able to understand personalities and be able to be effective in conflict management. So if I'm interviewing somebody for a project management position, and especially when they're starting out or they're, in the early phases of their careers, you don't necessarily look for only technical hardcore skills. You actually look for potential in personality, in terms of how analytical is this person? How are they organized? How do they organize their thoughts? How would they behave in a conflict situation where they have multiple stakeholders and they need to figure out a solution between differing sides? So focus a bit on your soft skills. Focus a little bit in terms of organizing your thoughts and analyzing before you come up with a response. And in addition to, having knowledge of project management tools or project management methodologies, and I'll come into these a bit more further in the session, you also need to be able to understand that project delivery deals with end customers or end stakeholders. So you need to be able to traverse communication. So focus a lot more on your communication in terms of how you are presenting yourself and your ideas across to other people. Beyond this, when you are getting ready for an interview or you want to actually move into this field, you need to be very clear and you need to do some homework in terms of preparation. So if you have a particular organization or a particular role in mind that you want to apply for, do some research. Research on that company, understand the history of that organization. How have they been built? How many employees they have? What kind of departments do they have? who are their top customers or top projects that they have recently delivered. What is the general market feedback about, let's say, those organizations? And then if you have an interview lined up, do a little bit of research on the people who are going to be taking your interview. So you need to be able to understand what profile your interviewee is going to be coming from. And this kind of homework beforehand, it actually gives you brownie points because it allows the panel to see that, yes, you're willing to put in the work, you're willing to do your homework, and you're willing to come prepared for your interview and for your sessions as well. So this is one part of the preparation that I would say is very important, especially when you are in the process of either starting out, or you have, let's say, a bit of experience, or you're actually even moving from one field to another. The other thing
Okay.
that's very
So if I
important.
was, go
Yeah, go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. No, go ahead. My bad.
So the other thing that I would say is, so a lot of IT organizations nowadays, they're not necessarily following the standard resume/cover letter format that we had before, but public sector or organizations that belong to public sector are historically very old. They still follow that format. But even if you are applying online on an employment portal, you need to be very clear about your strengths, about what you see yourself, where you see yourself going within 2 years or 3 years down the line, because this is something that an interviewer or somebody who is out looking for candidates will review. So myself, I would want to bring in a person into my team who is willing to grow in this field, who's not just there for 6 months and then will jump ship to another thing. So you have to be able to show that, yes, this is the area where I want to invest in, and which is something that I'm planning to stay in for a slightly longer period of time.
Okay, great. So, Aisha, those are some great tips. But you said research the company and research the role. But before somebody does that, how do we have an understanding of what the project management role is about? What kind of responsibilities are we really signing up for?
Okay. So project management is all about making sure that any project delivery, software delivery, any portfolio or program that you are delivering as an IT vendor or supplier to end customers is delivered from a scientific perspective, within defined scope, within defined budget, schedule. But the project management field is a lot more than these three things, which you'll actually see in a lot of our reading material. You're going to hear about cost and schedules and scope, and these are definitely there. But it involves a lot more people management, stakeholder management, understanding business organization, both at, let's say, technical level and also at an organizational level, and then driving your KPIs and driving your teams to basically be able to deliver within those constraints. So a project manager, in the modern sense of the word, is somebody who we call a servant leader. And when I
Okay.
say servant leader, this is somebody who is actually driving the team to achieve the end objectives that we have, not by the traditional sense of pulling them forward, but actually enabling them to move forward in their respective tasks, and by removing impediments and removing any blockers that they may have. If you ask me what the day in a project manager or program manager's life looks like, so it's a lot about getting onto calls with different people, resolving issues, understanding why they're blocked, understanding why they're not motivated to work, why are we not on time, and trying to figure out solutions around those blockers. So 80% of a project manager's job is communication, communication, communication. And this is actually the most critical factor that anybody will look at: your ability to communicate what you're thinking clearly and to be able to come up with solutions on the fly. So this is what modern project management is all about. And the other thing that is important to some extent is to be able to think on your feet. You have to be, nowadays, IT and a lot of the organizations have moved to a very fast-paced delivery model. So we're in a world where customer requirements are changing by the minute, by the hour, by the day. So people that you're working with, they're coming up with new requirements and new requests every single day. which means as a project manager, you're kind of always on your feet to be able to drive and adhere to those changing, wishes
Yeah.
or scope, as you may call it in a more technical term. When I started out my career, we were working in much more traditional project management where we had a defined contract. We had very, very defined and limited, clearly bound deliveries or projects that we were working on. But nowadays, things have changed. We are moving towards much more fast-paced changes. So as a project manager, you have to develop the ability to think on your feet. And
Okay.
this is something that comes only with practice. So I'm not expecting anybody who let's say is just starting out in the industry to be a pro at it, but these are the things that
Yeah.
you need to keep top of mind.
So you also mentioned that you need to have some. So that you emphasize a lot on the soft skills a project manager needs to highlight. In addition to that, what are some of the crucial technical skills a project manager must have for any role in the company in any company?
From a technical perspective, I would suggest so there are multiple approaches here, Huda, and let me take them all one by one. It
Yeah.
really depends on the kind of organization that you're working on. So if you're working in small to medium or an entrepreneurship type organization where you're working on software development projects, then the kind of technical skills that you need are different because you're working with developers, you're working with people who are doing architecture design, you're working with people who are building UI or UX designs and prototypes and websites and portals and things like that. So at that level, a project manager is generally expected to be a lot more technical in terms of having knowledge of the technologies that his team is delivering. This is one part of the project management
Okay.
skill.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would encourage all project managers to invest time in is understanding delivery methodologies. And I'll just name a couple of them here. We talk about agile or scrum delivery methodologies, and this is something that you're going to see in a lot of current deliveries or project or software houses that any of us move into. So get to understand a little bit about what agile delivery is all about. Secondly, you also need to be able to understand a little bit the kind of software tools that you might be using. A lot of organizations, they use for agile delivery, they use Jira, they may use Kanban boards. Some companies may use Microsoft Project or Microsoft scheduling tools. So it's important to have some kind of technical knowledge about the tools that are used to supplement project delivery as well. A lot of the people may find that these tools are specific to a certain organization. So different organizations generally have their own SLAs about the tools and methodologies that you're working on. However, as an interviewer, I would always be interested in seeing the knowledge base a candidate carries. So you're always interested in understanding their ability to understand and onboard on a technical tool and what they know already. Because at the end of the day, as somebody who's bringing in a project manager, if they're already well versed with a lot of the technologies, it means quicker onboarding. It means they're able to deliver value much more quickly. So those are the things that actually interviewers also look out for. The other category here comes at a different level. And this is mostly if you're working at a program or portfolio management, or you're working with, let's say, corporations, especially.
Yeah.
In these in this area, basically the difference exists because you're not necessarily working with end developers or QC team members. You're mostly working in terms of managing a higher level portfolio. So you're looking at a program, maybe something that has a much bigger outreach and is bigger in size. And when you are starting to look at that, your perspective has to change. You need to have much more understanding of the industry that you're working with. So if you're working with public sector, if you're working with healthcare, if you're working with financial organizations, so that kind of information or that kind of knowledge base needs to come in. And the
Yeah.
other thing that actually changes as you move up higher in the chain from project to portfolio or program management is a person or a candidate's ability to understand how businesses work and what their end strategies are. So you're not
Yeah.
necessarily working on tools every single day, but you're sitting in boardrooms, you're discussing strategy, you're discussing the long-term pipeline, you're trying to actually manipulate what you're going to be doing in the next 3 months based on the vision that an organization has 5 years down the line. So as
Okay.
you move further up the chain, you need to
Yeah.
sort of broaden your horizons and get industry knowledge and get strategic business management as well.
Okay, so you mentioned that highlighting your core soft skills, which are crucial for the role, which is communication, emphasizing how you are a great communicator, and also not having the knowledge for specific tools, but having a general knowledge of how the tools are in the industry, and then specific to a company maybe, and demonstrate that knowledge. But more than that, demonstrate that somebody can, you are a very fast learner and you can wrap your head around something very quickly because the tools are going to change, right? So you
Yeah.
need to have a basic understanding and have that. And also, you mentioned something really important, which is besides that, in a so those are the two core areas that you mentioned. I wanted to also ask you, how would an interviewer highlight it, and are there any questions that particular questions that you would ask a candidate to know that he's a good communicator, he's a fast learner? What kind of questions would that be?
So there are two questions that I always ask in my interview, and I might
Yeah.
just be letting the cat out of the bag, but I think it's important from my perspective. I always ask a candidate, why do they want to become a project manager? This
Okay.
is very important for me as a somebody in this field, because at the end of, and the reason behind this question is, project management, often
Yeah.
when you're actually working on a day-to-day activities, is very hectic. It's very, very exhausting. You're working with people, you're overcoming obstacles all the time, you are trying to reason with people. So it's not necessarily a job which is very easy and just sitting on the desk. So somebody really, really has to be motivated to be able
Yeah.
to live within this kind of a paradigm, because sometimes you end up in frustrating conversations and you're like, why am I doing this and spending my whole day doing this? So anybody
Yeah.
who is coming into project management, and this is not to discourage people, but this is just to let them know that at the end of the day, you have to be motivated enough to be able to stay within the field. There's no saying that you cannot move on at a later point, but this is a question that I always ask because it gives me an insight into a person's motivation for the field. And it's also a kind of question that allows me to see how their brain works, and how they're able to come up with logic for something which is not very mathematical. It's much more intrinsic and unclear. This is the
Yeah.
first question that I ask somebody.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I always ask people are some very random questions like, do you know how many cars there are in Islamabad? And this is a very random question, but the reason behind asking this question is it allows me to see that person's thought process. Nobody has an answer for this. Nobody is going to be able to give me an accurate number, but the idea is to be able to see the thought process
Yeah.
in which they go during problem solving, because the
Yeah.
number of cars in Islamabad could be very similar to another impossible problem that you have come up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you have to figure out a solution in 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
this is my second question. In addition to this, some other things that I think are very important is, people will ask you, or interviewers will definitely be interested in knowing of a situation where, let's say, you failed and you were still able to bring the project or your delivery or your work or your project back to success. So it's very important for us to be able to understand how you manage failure, how you manage conflict resolution. There are often situations, especially when you're working in teams and you're working with different stakeholders, where each stakeholder has a different interest in the overall goal, how you manage that. So it's important that candidates come prepared with clear examples from their own experiences, even if it's university level experience or something in their personal life. All of that is okay. But to be able to give an example of where you were effectively able to resolve a conflict, or where you were able to bring something from, failure back to success. So those things I think are very critical.
So, what would be a good example of that question? Because a lot, many times we do expect that question, but we don't know how to answer it effectively.
You're right. So for now, you're taking an interview of me, Huda. All right. So,
Yeah.
for conflict management, you actually need to come up with a situation. Like I will give an example from, let's say, my work
Yes.
in the recent past. So,
Yeah.
uh, in a recent delivery that I was working with across Middle East, we have a situation where one of the technical team members from our customer team, and this is a financial institute, uh, they are causing blockers within the delivery. And they're causing those blockers. Why? Because they have a political stake in not having some activity proceed. So we're going ahead with the migration, and for some reason we have technical blockers in between. Now, this kind of a situation, your standard process would be that you go and talk to the customer's project manager or their program manager, or you go and escalate as a project manager that, guys, this blocker, which doesn't make sense, it's not logical. It is actually causing a delay in our schedule. It is causing an impact on our cost. It is causing an impact on XYZ, whatever your factors may be. However, another very basic process of managing this conflict is to get into a direct dialogue with that person. Often you find out that a lot of the blockers are not there because there are technical constraints or there are financial constraints. The
Yeah.
problems are there because different team members either do not get along, or they have trust issues, or they're scared of something. So in this scenario, what we found out, that that team member was afraid of or was insecure about losing their potential role in the organization because we were moving ahead with a specific task. And this only happened because I got into a direct call with that person. I told them, guys, this is not an official call. I
Yeah.
just want to understand what you're thinking. I just want to know what's going on in your brain. What do you see as a risk here? What do you see as a problem here? And then eventually, when we understood the root cause of the reaction, we were able to resolve it. So
Yes.
this could be one situation. Another situation could be that often you actually find out that you are starting out a delivery. Before you start out a project as a project manager, in majority organizations, there will be a sales team that will be working to bring on the contract or the project or the work that you're supposed to deliver. And when you actually get into the calls with customers, you find out that the customer was expecting something completely different. We sold them maybe a Toyota and they were expecting an Audi. So there are always these differences in expectation management that you have to do. And in such situations, and this happened with me a while ago on another one of my projects, where we sold the customer something and expecting a delivery to be completed within a certain time. And when we got into the initial meetings, or let's say planning workshops with this customer, we found out that they had a completely different thing in mind. They're not even willing to work on what we have agreed in our contract. So this, from a pure project management perspective, is a scope creep, it's a change management request, so on and so forth. In such situations, you might not be able to get this resolved through a direct informal discussion. Such situations need to be taken to an executive level. There has to be a discussion, not at the technical level, but at an executive level. So you need to be able to, in conflict management,
Yeah.
understand your possible communication channels and the cards that you hold so that you can use them at the right time.
Okay, great. It does also, like, your response also highlights that a project manager can expect to get any kind of problems, but he or she is supposed to get to the root cause of the what the problem is, identify it, get to the root cause of it, and come up with the most efficient way of solving it. Someone who's like creative with solutions is what we're
Yes.
looking for.
Yes.
Okay, that sounds great. So, Aisha, thank you so much for your time. Do you have 5 more minutes, or do we wrap up now?
Sure. No, I have 5 more minutes. That's fine.
Okay, great. So, Aisha, so we looked at how a candidate is supposed to look at the interview before the interview with their research and company roles and everything, and then during the interview, the core strengths that you have to highlight mostly are, how good are you as a communicator, how committed you are to the job. If you have like an understanding of what you're getting into, could it be more sustainable that way for you and the company, and also highlight how you're a creative problem solver. And so and then that's those are the key areas that a candidate needs to really focus. Is there anything else that you would like to maybe share with the candidates that they can practice for before? How can they practice to do this before they have an interview with a company?
So don't, I would suggest just do some research. Do not practice your answers, because usually interviews are not led through a specific set of questions. It's more about a conversation. However,
Yeah.
get core examples of, let's say, some major things: conflict management or communications or stakeholder management ready. Get some examples from your own life ready. The other thing that is very important is take notes. And I know this is not a preparatory thing, but this is important. Take notes during the interview, because
Yeah.
a lot of times people, project managers, we will come back to a point that we discussed at the very beginning of the call, and we will want to
Yeah.
recap it, or we will want to look at it from a different angle. So take critical notes in your interviews. The third thing, have some research done about the people who are interviewing you, about the company, as I mentioned, and
Yeah.
just make sure that prior to the interview, you're not stressed. Be yourself. At the end of the day, you do not need to be nervous with an interview. You just need to be yourself. And the more comfortable you are with a person, I have a tendency that I usually start out anything with a joke. I'm very bad at jokes, but I do that still.
Yeah.
So it kind of gets me back into a, relaxed mode, especially if I'm stressed.
Yeah.
And so just use something like that. And at the end of the day, you have to be yourself. And that is what the interviewer wants to see as well, is you as the person, as you are, what you know, and that's primarily it.
Okay, great. That was quite insightful. Thank you so much, Aisha, for taking out your time. And also allowing all the candidates to reach out to you later. So again, it was a very quick session. So if anyone wants to have any specific questions, please feel free to reach out
Yes.
to Aisha. Maybe on her LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a good way for you, Aisha.
Yes,
Yes. Okay,
yes, they
that
can
would
reach
be
out to me
great.
on LinkedIn.
Yes. Thank you so
Perfect.
much for doing this. This is really helpful, and I hope you have a lovely Sunday.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Huda.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
Bye
Aisha.
bye. Bye.
Bye bye.